Today, we have a very special guest. Deb Sofield is someone I have known, I'm going to say, for 20 years. And I think Deb and I met at Clemson. I think we were both speaking and we started talking about our careers and where we're going and where we've been. And it just went on and on. But I can tell you, Deb has gone beyond when she spoke with me about what she wanted to do. Honey, she broke that glass ceiling a long time ago. So I'm going to bring in my good friend, Deb. You're going to love her. She, right now, among so many other things, is an executive speech coach. So I hope I'm saying it all right, Deb. I'm adding you to the studio, girlfriend. There we go. Hey there.
Hello, my dear friend. Gosh, it's been forever. It's nice to see you. I keep up with you on social media.
I know.
Well, actually, I can't keep up with you. You're all over on social media.
Oh, child. Now you just pay people to do that for you. Well, Deb, am I right? Did we meet at Clemson or was just one of our meetings there? Did we meet before that?
I'm going to have to say yes. And I believe we just connected as two Southern women with a lot of great stories. And then you were so kind, Jane, to help me get into National Speakers Association. And remember, you took me to a conference 100 years ago.
Oh my
and you
gosh.
showed me the ropes. You've been such a great friend and mentor through the years. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, goodness. Well, listen, I have loved watching you. And the connection that I think I connected with you initially was through the Miss South Carolina program where you were coaching girls. And we just sort of tapped on that a little bit. But tell me how that went. I know that's in your past. But of course, I got to bring it up. Look, is this sad or what? Ta-ta-da!
And the funny thing is, I would never be a contestant. I'm a tomboy, played basketball, but I ended up being a rock star interview coach because I love history, I love politics, I can explain it well to young people. And I probably for a number of years might have been the top coach in the Southeast. And I had so many winners. I had everybody from one of the very first Miss Rodeos this side of the Mississippi, and then Miss Rodeo National. So then all the way to Miss South Carolina, USA, and all the others. And I love the kids. If it weren't for the kids and realizing they need friends like us, normal people who can truly help them excel. And I just fell in love. And as you know, the pageant changed through the years. And as it did, my girls weren't interested, and I got a little tired of it. I didn't teach the walk and the wave. I'll leave that up to you. I explained where Afghanistan was. And, after a while, that got old too.
Well, Deb, I got to ask this because if you did Miss Rodeo America, is that the title?
Yes, Miss Rodeo America, sure. Her name was Carrie Sheffield. First winner. And then I had Callie Martin. She was the teen winner this first time this side of Mississippi. Carrie was one of the first out of Florida. And I got to tell you, I love the rodeo girls. Listen, I love them all. But the rodeo girls, Jane, you have to love something bigger than yourself, and it's a horse. And you have to rope and ride. And I find them to be just some of the most stellar young women I have ever worked with. And I fell in love with them. I love rodeo. So I've always headed to Clemson to see the rodeo, but no, a lot of fun.
So I'm so, people are very critical of the pageant world. I mean, last night, I don't know if you watched Miss America. Did you watch it? Yeah, I did too. I was on a Zoom call, so it was hard for me to keep up with everybody. But a lot of people, it seemed like now we're getting the new owner, Robin Fleming, I think that's her name. She's kind of combined Miss USA with Miss America, and it had a bunch more glamour to it, if you noticed.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were just ignorant to the pageant world, how would you defend a woman's right to compete, and why should she? Even the rodeo queens.
Sure. I'll tell you, I don't know if you remember Miss Rita Allison. Of course, you know her as a dear friend. Miss Rita, I know, and you love her because she was your sponsor to Miss America.
And my bridesmaid in the wedding, our wedding.
That's so fun. All right. So Miss Rita's the one who called me up one day and said, we need a real coach. And I'm like, yeah, not going to be me. I work with professionals. And she's like, we need somebody like you. We need somebody who isn't in the pageant world. And I said, fine. And I'll tell you, so my mom and I went to a pageant one time. She was blown away. She was like, I cannot believe we're sitting here. I'm like, me neither. And my girl didn't win. I remember her name was Holly Thompson, beautiful young lady. And when she hit the stage, Jane, the audience yelled, hallelujah. And I was like, boom, I'm in. And she didn't win. I remember sitting back thinking, this can't be that hard. I'm smart. I know how to help these kids. I just need to find the right girls. And Holly was amazing. And then I picked up one or two, and then three or four, and then boom, here they all come. And I had so many winners and just amazing young people. And you know what I saw? I saw the ugly duckling become a swan. And my
Yeah.
life changed when a girl walked in my office one day and said, Miss Deb, you're my ticket out of the trailer park. And
Oh
I
my
thought to
goodness.
myself, what? And she said,
Oh,
if
wow.
I could go to college, I'll be the first in my family.
Oh, well, I
And
was too.
and Jane, that was it. That changed my
Yeah.
life that day because I decided that if I say I love young people and I do, and I want to help them, and I want them to learn to live their best life ever, college isn't for everybody, but the
Mhm.
opportunity and the money, that's
Mhm.
what the pageant's about. So those who are snarky, you know what, they're going to be snarky about everything. 9 out of 10 times because they're not good looking enough to ever be in a pageant. All that to say, I do find um, it was opportunity. And so when people say, why pageants? Opportunity. And can I tell you, my girls win at every interview. Every time they
Oh
go for a
my
job,
goodness.
yeah,
Yeah.
every time we go for a job, we win. And can I tell you what's even better? Is that as they go through school, then they want to go to med school, and I do medical interviews, dental college job, and law scholarships. So I take them as a team, and I am with them until they get married. And then I go to the wedding, and then I become Aunt Deb. I mean, you end up being in this life cycle because you've been a part of their success for life. And I can't think of a greater legacy than for someone to say, I stand here today because Deb Sofield loved me enough to explain, what's going on in the Middle East. And my girls win all over, and I couldn't be more proud.
I love that. Now, I want to take where you are now
Sure.
because this is your passion. And all of that, of course, was fun and exciting. But what you're doing now with your executive speech coaching
Sure.
positions.
Right.
So, I don't know if you can even share with us a nameless person
Sure.
that you have worked with and the net of your coaching. Can you give us a great story? Because I love what you're doing. I mean, I'm a big believer in the right words. The communication skill has to be sharp as a tack. So take us through one of your executive coaching sessions with a rock star. How's that?
Well, I believe you mentioned before we started, and I train at the top campaign schools in the nation. So many of your elected women are my clients. I have been with them. I am the one that explains how you get through a debate. And today's debates are just, nasty, nasty, nasty. But why don't you just stop and say, you make a good point? And then boom, now we go on. You must change the public's opinion. The situation has gotten a little bit out of hand. So many of and I have a few male clients, there's no doubt. I have more male clients in business. I do have a lot in politics, governors, members of Congress. And I also work internationally for the U.S. State Department. So I'm in other countries, and I primarily help women who have a seat in parliament. And they get there and they're a token, but then they're like, I could do something with this. And then I'm brought in to help. I'm an elected water commissioner. I've been elected for many years. And so I understand the political process. And so teaching at campaign school has absolutely opened the door for me to help people find their path into public service. And then what I call civil society, where we're trying to make the world a better place. So to take you through a session, it's so interesting. I have presidents of corporations. They're like, well, I must be a pretty good speaker. I'm the president. And I'm like, yeah, that means nothing. And what's funny is probably 5, 6 times out of 10, the wife is the one who calls me. And she said, I
Oh, she
love my
sees the
husband.
big picture.
He's a terrible speaker, and we've got to do well. And so she's like, will you come to the house? Well, I will, as long as she's there and there's other people there. And the first
Right.
thing that happens when I walk in, he's like, well, I don't want to talk about the stock. Well, we have to talk about the stock because it's tanking. And you just have to rearrange it. If I could convince most of my speakers, if you make the ending the beginning, you change everything. See, anybody can write an introduction. how are you going to close? And nobody wants to hear you for that long. I know you think you're amazing, but I'm probably going to cut your speech in half because I want people to say, I could have heard her all day versus she went on all day. So just a lot, I used to own an ad agency. So I see things from a little bit different perspective where I can say, listen, the public's, they're not going to buy it. Or where's your logo on your slides? I mean, why do we have 47 slides? Nobody said, oh, I can't wait to see their slide deck. So no, it's just, you need somebody who's been successful in business, a successful speaker, and someone who does it for a living. You've seen it too. People got through hard times. They're like, well, I'm pretty funny. I think I'll be a speaker. And I'm strong enough to pick up the phone and say, and when did you become a speech coach? Because if you mess somebody up, you might mess them up for life. So find somebody who does it well and is successful and loves the business. I know, shocking but true, Jane. I am almost 30 years in this business.
No, Deb, I'm listening to you. I've seen you do your work. I see all the social media, and I am so excited for you that you have gone to international links. Oh my gosh. And you taught at Harvard. You got the Order of the Palmetto. You really an international executive coach. That is so impressive. For one reason only. You're good.
Thank you.
I mean, you're good at what you do. I mean, if you weren't, you wouldn't be doing this. I love the pageant thing. Now what you're doing is super exciting. Now let's go back to the very beginning. How in the world did you become an executive speech coach?
So when I was in college, I started in radio and television, and I had a teacher who pulled me aside and said, you're in the wrong major. And I said, well, somebody I was in high school with, she's in that major and I don't really care for her. And she's like, I don't care. Boom, public speaking. And I actually have a degree in public speaking. And I must say it was a very rigorous, private, small college. And at any given time, there were 5 speeches on deck. You were researching one, you were preparing for one, you were giving one, you just gave one. So I learned how to do it early. And I can remember when I graduated from college, the obligatory trip to the beach, and I'm floating out in the water with my dad. He's like, so what are we going to do with a speech degree? And I remember saying, Dad, if I could sway the masses, I can do anything. And he's like, well, Deb, if anybody can, it'll be you. We floated back into the shore. And it took me a little while to get my feet, but I opened an ad agency with a friend. I had worked in politics for years. My candidates lost. Went to auctioneer school and met a whole new group of people. And it really, it was funny about auctioneer school. It knocked off my, I'm going to say it, preppy rough edges. It just made me realize that the Bubba I was looking at was paying cash for the tractor.
Right.
He would never enter into my life, but he's like, boom, 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 $100 bills. We're paying for a $30,000 tractor. I realized there's a lot more people than in my country club. So it really gave me. It's kind of like you in the tomato fields. I mean, you just see a different side of life, and you realize that maybe you've been sheltered, or I'm the youngest of 5. I'm the only girl, so I pretty much had it rough and tumble growing up. And through all that, again, then I ended up ultimately an ad agency. I bought in, and a friend and I started it. I sold my partnership, and I took a year off and traveled. And I would call my friends up, and they're like, we have to work, Deb. I'm like, darn it, nobody wants to go play with me. So I'm like, well, maybe I should go back to work. So I hung a shingle, and people who I had helped at the ad agency started calling saying, I've got to give a big speech. Can you help me? And so word of mouth. I don't advertise because I'm not for everybody. My price point keeps me at a very safe distance. So over time, it just grew and grew. And then somebody asked if I would speak. And I always wanted to be a national speaker. If you had asked me when I was a kid what I wanted to be, it was a speaker. But I also realized I'm not a one and done. I don't just motivate you and then you go home. I do actionable items that'll change your life. So I primarily teach public speaking, how to deal with the media, and then crisis communication, and then powerful presence. So everything still falls under public speaking, but that career it's just been great. I love what I do. I truly, just like you, I could do it every day of my life. And I would happy as I could be.
Well, so funny because we were out of town recently and the King's speech came on,
Okay,
and
my
I absolutely love
yeah.
that movie, and I hadn't seen it since it came out, maybe 10 years, maybe less, but it's so brilliant and the power of the spoken word.
Mhm.
And I know you massage those words like, "Oh, there's got to be a better word here."
Right.
And it's a science, and not many people realize carefully crafted presentations take blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. And that is a challenge, those of us who do present, even in comedy. There are
Right.
some words that are funnier than others. And I just went to New York and with Thomas, it was his business trip, and saw the funniest Broadway musical. I couldn't believe I went because everybody said, you got to see Shucked.
Yeah.
And, it's about corn. But these Nashville songwriters and script writers hit on this thing. But the whole thing was about playing on the English language and
Mm.
in the South. And I thought, well, they're going to make fun of the South. But they didn't. It was like
Right.
brilliance and wisdom, Southern style, because the main character would say something like, yeah, that paper airplane over there, if it don't fly, it's just stationary. And everybody just went into hysterics.
Yeah.
I mean, it was punny, it was punny and it was funny. Some people were there 3 and 4 times just to hear the
Wow.
comedy and
Yeah.
the entertaining play on words, which is, to me, you have a gift
Mm.
when you can bring that forward as you do and help people take their business to the next level. And that seems to be, what your heart passion is.
It is. And there's one thing you asked me about, do I have clients and things? Hopefully, if you ever hear or you have speakers finish, you're like, wow, they were really good. No questions. It's because we've already answered all the questions in the presentation. So I always
Oh,
say to my
yeah.
clients, if you ever get a question, we're going to answer it because questions start a fight. So the world has changed. And as a speaker, there's not a lot of room for error unless you're really good. And then you can make a quick twist. But I will say that I spend an awful lot of time. And to your point, certain words, listen, if your tongue can't say a word, pick another one, people. But it's amazing how many folks are like, no, we're going to use this word. Nah, it's not working for you. And it's helping people become comfortable with who they are, because when you are, then you shine. And when you shine, you can change a life.
That's very true. And you are so right, hitting on the fact that our communication world has changed.
Mm.
And, I go back and I look at what's happened in our political scene. I look what's happened socially. And it seems like people are just the keyboard cowboys.
Yeah.
Keyboard cowboys. They don't, and they're right there. See, I've always said this: people don't know how to talk to each other anymore. They know how to text. They know how to be ugly on social media. I mean, I had a YouTube short about going to speak somewhere. It was in Flint, Michigan, flying into Detroit. And the car service was supposed to pick me up at 3. They got a fax. That's how long ago it was. It looked like it was a 5. And the girl came, the sales and marketing executive. Now, they don't even exist anymore, sadly. But one of the members had a company, a car company, and sent a brand new stretch limo. Well, I didn't ask for that limo, and I certainly didn't ask for the driver. That girl was out of her mind, couldn't drive.
Wow.
And bless her heart, I tried, our lives were on the line, but she got better when she got on the interstate out of the airport. But there was this massive tire that the tread came off, hit the car. She started crying. I said, pull over. And I had to drive. Well, all of that to say, the story's funny. It's a humor bit. And the meeting planner was jaw dropped when he saw me driving her in the back of the car.
Yeah.
But people just, I looked at my views, and it was like over 24 hours, it was like almost 2,000 views. I said, what is this? Well, they started throwing me under the limo, the bus, because, privileged person trying to relate. And I went, what? And so I made the mistake of engaging in conversation, which I never should have, because I wasn't going to win. Because when I would say, I didn't ask for that limo, well, you should have told them that the driver was not capable. Well, I didn't know what to do. I actually wrote a letter. I felt sorry for her. Well, you shouldn't have. See, it didn't
Yeah.
matter what I said. I got on the defense and they were on offense. So when you take a battle like that, I don't know, Deb, what should I have done? Just say thank you for your comments, or just not just delete it? I mean, what would you advise somebody to do that, and it happens a lot.
It
People
does.
get back and forth on social media. I mean, pick, and then it escalates into something crazy. So what would you advise?
Well, it's so funny. So I leave tomorrow to teach realtors, and the title is The Weaponization of Social Media.
How about that?
And that is what it is. It is the weaponization of social media. But here's the key, Jane: never send a third reply. That's a fight. So they respond,
That's
you
a good
respond, and then you cut off the comments. And they can be mad at you all day long. It doesn't matter. They weren't voting for you anyway. They weren't coming to your show. They weren't buying your book. They just felt empowered to say hateful things. And unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of that. Yes, you should engage, but you need to engage on the platform where the fight started. So what happens is somebody gets mad at you on Twitter and the company goes to Facebook and you're like, wrong place. So that's crisis communication. You need to know where you're going. Now, I would say all those people who are hateful to you, they're not in your friend book. They're not even your people. And they just felt like they could. And this whole idea of attacking people for their beliefs, their race, their creed, it's gotten out of hand. And so in a sense, you do have to fight back, but also they're not, it's like, why let somebody worry you has no value or whose opinion isn't anybody you would seek out? And I know it sounds harsh. Oh, you're supposed to love everybody. Well, I will if you're kind, but if you're not, I'm moving right along because I got a lot of work to do in the world. But just so, rule number, it's kind of like we say in crisis communication, when it gets bad, turn off the fan.
Yeah.
You don't need it to continue on, but never send a third reply. That starts a fight.
I love that. The third reply. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah,
Do you have other tips like that? The one-liners about this is boom, boom, boom. I don't want you to give away a presentation, but that was very good. The third response, that's it. Done. Cut it off. Anything else you can tell folks who maybe deal with nasty all the time?
So Jane, it's something else I really encourage people to do, and you do a great job. And I don't do a great job because I'm spending so much time working, but you really need to build your social media. And it doesn't always have to be about your company. So I had a client in Connecticut. She's running for office. And she's like, nobody's engaging with me on Facebook. I don't know. Whine. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, next time, because I went and looked at her Facebook page and it was politics, opinion, fight. I said, why don't you put up a post that says, why are we called the nutmeg state? And she's like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm like, fine, we'll just put it up and see what happens. Boom! 400 positive comments. Why? Because everybody wants to weigh in and not about politics. And who knows why Connecticut's called the nutmeg state? There's 1,000 reasons why. But what we did is we changed the dialogue. We changed the focus. And sometimes, especially in the political world, you're not going to win. I mean, even if we agree, you're still mad at me. You're not going to let me win. So you have to do other things. And so that's what I focus on. I really encourage people to maybe every third or fourth or fifth post is something about your state. I mean, South Carolina, we've got great things. We have like the largest ginkgo tree here. We sell the most. We have, sweet grass baskets. We are the only place in the nation that does those. We have the sweet tea trail. We also are the home place of barbecue. I know North Carolina argues with us, but we win. We grow more peaches than Georgia. So what happens is you start plugging in small fun facts. You are building your community of likes. And so when something negative happens, they go, well, that doesn't sound like Deb. And I've already built likes. I'm not looking for anybody. And they come to your rescue. They don't come to your rescue if you've never done anything to engage them. And I have found more and more people are refusing to do the fun stuff, the silly stuff. But yet you will be in my friend list because you've liked it. So when something negative happens, I have now put at least part of a shield up to protect me. And then my team will come. But friends, you got to be careful. I think you know this. For years, I was a press secretary, and I finally had to quit because the gentleman I worked for, I got to the point where I just could not keep saying he didn't say that, because he did, and he was a nut. And I was like, I can't do this anymore, because I didn't want to be dishonest. So
Well, do
I
you ever do damage control? You were kind of alluding to that a little bit. And you being the press secretary for someone that was difficult to defend. In other words, what do you do when you are representing someone, or let's just say there's in our state a nameless soul made a mistake outside of marriage, and a gentleman, I guess a man, I'll say that. But how do you salvage that? I would think, now this is off the cuff, I would come clean. So I made a mistake and I regret that.
Well, if it's Mr.
That work?
Faith, hold on now. It depends. Is it Mr. Faith, Freedom, and Barbecue?
Yes.
Yeah, that one's a problem, because that was a dishonest lie to his voters. And I'll just say it. And if you were to call me, I'd say it to him on the phone. What you do is something he didn't do. He scooted back to DC. He's never apologized, and I doubt he will. And even if he does, it's too late. So listen, America's very forgiving. We forgave Mike Tyson for biting off that guy's ear. We've forgiven Tylenol. We even forgave Martha Stewart. But you have to be genuinely sorry.
Yeah.
And you can't be, oh, I met my soulmate. We've already had that one come through our ranks.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Go off and be a nut. Yeah, for being such a religious state, we have some pretty crazy people. But no, listen, America will forgive if it is a true apology that is contrite, not because we made you.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said you never share anything from the platform unless you have conclusion. It should not be a whine, cry, and oh, I'm unworthy therapy session. Nobody likes weak people, much less a weak leader. So, then you've got people that just, I tell you, all this stuff. I think Jim Gaffigan, I mean, somebody really came after him for comments he made, and they were nasty. I mean, they were gross. I mean, you recall this, but he said, yeah, I did that. And then he kind of backed out of the public eye, and he came back stronger than ever. But, meetings are having a time with the way they present from the platform anymore. I mean, several comedians absolutely will not do college campuses anymore. And can you blame them?
No, because the crazies are running the insane asylum, and there are no rules in place. It's free speech for everybody but you. Well, now, wait a second. That's not how it's supposed to be. And what I find is, Jane, and you know this, they're not smart enough to argue with me. So they have to shut me down. Because if you were smart enough to argue with me, you would allow this debate to continue, but you're not. And it's like every blue moon, and you've seen this too, somebody thinks they should be on the stage and they'll make a comment from the floor, and I've actually said, you seriously going to take on a executive speech coach, right? And then we're like, oh, no, I guess not. Yeah, you're right, because I will slay you. And, I don't mean to be unkind, but you're pushing me. This is my event. Hopefully one day they'll pay you to hit the stage. But until then, please be polite.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, it's been, it's a little bit different. And, I do a lot more, I'm going to say smaller sessions, because I do much more. I do TV interviews where I make you stand up. I put you on film and we practice. So I still have audiences of 1,000, but I really enjoy, listen, there's nothing better than when your client's better. I mean, literally 30 minutes later, and they get the pivot, or they know how to come back with a soft landing and transition. There's nothing better. And so I find great joy in helping people win. And it's a hard game, and you have to practice. And Jane, you said, do I have another tip? Yeah, practice out loud. Because know the phrase, the ear can fix what the eye can't see. So you write it and it's perfect, but nobody talks that way. And so now it's very stilted conversation and it's not interesting. But if you say it and you go, oh, I could say it better. because the ear can fix what the eye can't see. And so I really push people to practice out loud. And I know it seems silly, but I do it all the time.
No, no, I think when I was training for Miss America, I would stand there and look in the mirror, and I'm thinking, if I can convince a mirror, I can convince anybody. And I've always said that. But Jeannie Robertson was a rock star with stories, and I had Dan Clark, and he was talking about Jeannie. He had the greatest comment. He said, "Facts tell, but stories sell."
So, yeah.
They sell. So how often do you engage your clients in storytelling in their presentations?
So storytelling is something that goes in and out of vogue every 3 to 4 years. And when it's out, it's out. So don't go cramming it back in. It's sort of out right now. So there's a real interesting, I'm going to get to that. Let me just tell you this interesting phenomena that we're seeing nationwide. And that is people who have made money in other areas have now all decided they are life coaches. And so they have enough money to have a studio, and they ask their friends, and it's the same little circle of the same 7 people. And I'm sure they're really good people, but they have nothing to say because they keep saying it to each other, and it didn't work the first 12 times. So what happens is then they decide they should tell their story because they're millionaires, and more power to you. But just because you sold vitamins and people bought it, or a health bar or a shake or something, doesn't make you a life guru. And we keep putting a lot of energy and effort into successful people who are good. And I know they mean well, and I believe their heart's in the right place, but you got nothing to say. You compare that to an Adam Grant, a Brene Brown, a Jane Jenkins Herlong, people who have life stories that change lives. Big difference. Your story has to be true, and it has to be about you. Unless you let the audience know that it's a story you borrowed from someone else. There for a while on the circuit. You heard this. Everybody said, I am the daughter of so-and-so, who's the daughter of so-and-so, who's the aunt of, and first time I heard it, I thought, wow, that's really cool. The 13th time I heard it. No.
Well, with Jeannie, I'm going to get some of her comedy with class winners, and I'd like to put her video up and just sort of dissect it. But there is one that went viral, and a lot of people on this listened to Jeannie and listened to her. Sadly, she's so missed. But I watched her video, and it was "Don't Send a Man to the Grocery Store."
That's right. That's what she's quite famous for.
Yes. And I watched her body language, and there was a lot of pageant hints in there. And I saw her step out of the arena she was working with points on the stage. People don't realize all that is very strategic.
Yes.
But she makes it natural in her presentations. But she literally stepped out and paused and said, now I want to tell you the way Jerry thinks. Then she explained Jerry. And then she literally stepped right back in to that box where she was working on the stage. And it let people visually know, I'm going to digress and tell a story within a story. Yes. All of that to say what you teach is very intentional. It is not, get up there and speak from your heart. That dog does not hunt, point, or get off the porch. I'm just telling you. It doesn't work that way. It has to have
I have a number of clients, and I'll just admit it. It's a lot of my African-American men who come, and they all have a very similar story where their life was tough and they've overcome and they want to tell the story. I'm like, okay, I've heard that before. Oh, no, Deb, you haven't heard mine. Well, actually, I have. And it's been real hard. And I've had only a few that'll trust me to go deeper and tell the other story. And those are the few that have been successful. All the others are still a one and done, and it's very hard because listen, life is tough, and everything comes to you at a different time, and you react differently according to your age and where you are, who's around you. And it has been a real struggle because I have so many amazing guys that I want to see change the world because they want to change the world, but they're having a hard time getting past that story that got them to the stage the first time. Because it won't get you there again.
How about accents? Like, I know a lot of people love accents, and sometimes somebody told me that when they hear someone open their mouth that's real Southern, it's like their IQ goes down 20 points. And I thought, oh my, what do you do with that, Deb? Because so many of us in this part of the country, listen, I'm a low country girl. So,
That's it.
we've got that low country brogue. And then I was raised on a farm and I know the Gullah culture and it's a beautiful poetic language. So what do you do about that when you have just cultural stamps on the way you speak?
So I will tell you that I can be Southern if I have to. I don't, because my mom was from upstate New York and then she was in Wyoming, and I'm an executive coach, so I can move my accent a bit. But I'll say the Southern accent is the number one accent people want to hear because it is soothing on the ear. It also is a very more genteel. And listen, I love my friends in Jersey, but we don't clip our words down here. And if somebody is that ignorant to go after your accent, that says more about them than it does about us. And which, if you hate us so much, why are y'all moving here?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I'll tell you what, there are so many folks moving here, and you can tell they're not from here because they don't hold the door at the post office. They honk the horn the minute the light turns green, and they're just rude. And then they're like, well, I thought Southerners were nice. Well, we were until you got here. And as you well know, there's a lot of pushback to send them back to where, listen, you came from broken values. You voted the wrong way. Now you come here and you're still voting that way. I mean, you're a special kind of stupid. I mean, I don't know how you fix some of that. So it's now I got to tell you, I will be Southern if I have to, but, or if I feel like it, but I'm probably easier. Jane, you wouldn't, I mean, listen, you'll be successful no matter what you do because you can sing and you can speak and you're the, triple threat here, beautiful, smart, and talented. But I will say your charm and it's who you are. Why would you change that? Because somebody thinks that it's not intelligent. Yeah. Well, guess who's on stage and guess who's not?
Yeah.
I don't put up with silliness.
Well, that's a great answer. And that's so sweet. About maybe 5 or 6 years ago, after all this time in this business, I realized, and I hired a publicist, and they wrote something about me, and it just hit. And it was a sentence, Jane's Southern fried humor. And I went, oh my gosh. And then I thought, wait a minute. I don't consider myself all Southern fried humor. I think I'm more than that. So that's when I came up with Sweet Tea Wisdom, Southern fried humor. And I
Great
thought,
book, by the way.
Thank you. I'm reading it in the studio. I read today from 10 to 2, and it was crazy. But speaking of books, tell me about your books.
So thank you. I did the same thing. My book, Speak Without Fear, is my very first book that hit the market. And it is a public speaking primer. If you want to be a better speaker, pick that one up. And then I wrote another one during COVID called Perfecting Your Platform. And pardon me, that's the one I wish somebody had told me coming through the ranks. When you're young and you walk into a conference center and the place is freezing cold and you're cold and you're on stage, your audience is dying, but you're so worried about the paycheck that you don't have the guts to walk up to somebody and say, you need to turn the heat on here. I now, man, no holds barred, man. I'm there for my audience and they better be comfortable. And if they're not comfortable, I'm not going on stage. So it's a book that's like, boom, here's what you have to do. Somebody has to say, if you're a speaker, you're not going to the bar and you're in bed by 10 o'clock because nothing good happens after 9 if you're a speaker.
That's right.
And there's just nobody says this stuff. Well, I do, because I have seen more good people wreck their career because they thought they'd be funny at the bar till 2 a.m. And the next day they're not at their very best. And guess what? You don't get many chances because everybody claims to be a speaker. So that's the other one, Perfecting Your Platform. I, like you, have read both of them for Audible. So somebody said, it's like taking Deb Sofield on a car ride. So I've got that. And then I have, I had a radio show for many, many, many years. And I had a newsletter for many years. And then I was laying in bed one night and I'm like, Lord, I need another stream of income. And it was like, yeah, I do have 250 podcasts. I'm like, boom. So I turned those into a 3-volume set called Encouragement for Your Life, Tough Love Memos to help you fight your battles and change the world. So I have 5 books on the market right now.
That is great. That's fabulous. And I was talking today at the studio. I've got this novel. I didn't tell you about this. It's pretty dark, but it'll be coming out this year.
Wow.
And in fact, got a film, a 2-year option on a film. That's a new thing for me. But
Dang,
you know,
good for
everybody says,
you.
what do you do? And I'll say, honestly, I'm a professional noodle thrower. I just see what sticks. And for stuff to stick, a lot of times it's got to be in some hot water. So you have something you feel like on your heart to say. But another book that I'm co-authoring with Eva Marie Everson, she's hilarious.
Okay.
And you'll love this because it's on the order of what you're doing. And it's called Raisin Bells, Southern Sayings Our Mama Taught Us That All Y'all Need to Hear.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's very funny. And so we're collecting stories. Doesn't matter where you're from. I mean, I have a Yankee friend in Aiken, and her name is Doris. And I said, Doris, you got a little funny story? She said, oh, yes. My mother said, never wear patent leather shoes with your Roman Catholic uniform to school. All the trashy girls did that. And I thought, now that's funny.
That's good.
Yeah, she won't let me put her full name in there for obvious reasons. You could tell the trashy little girls with the patent leather shoes and the skirts. She was so funny. So, this project is a way to do exactly what you're doing. It's reminding people of things that this culture doesn't know.
Right.
I'm telling you. And if you found, Deb, when you stand up on a platform, you're going back in your archives going, that's a funny story. I hadn't told that in a while. And you're thinking, I don't know. And you maybe just for fun throw it out and you've got people going, what?
Yeah.
That was incredible. And you want to go, it's 30 years old. But guess what? Y'all are not learning these things. And I need to remind you of those tried and true things that you are not getting from your family or your work or your friends. Did that make sense?
It does. It's funny you said that because I have dusted off an old marketing ploy campaign that they used called Feel, Felt, Found. And so years ago, I guess multi-level marketing was much bigger, like Amway and all that. And because Americans think in threes, red light, yellow light, green light, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, proton, neutron, electron, snap, crackle, pop. We think in threes. You have to have 3.
Yes, we do.
So feel, felt, found works. So it's something that maybe somebody didn't agree with. You know what? I understand how you feel. Many people I spoke to felt as you do until they found out. And what you've done is I've acknowledged your concern. I've told you you're not alone. And then I've told you where we're going. And so it's that simple. And then, if someone says, oh, we're going to work on an elevator speech, run away. That's old school. Nobody cares about you to the 32nd floor. So we teach something called B, big fat claim, explain, example. Tell me something you are rock star amazing at. And it has to fit on a bumper sticker and not on a Hummer. So, you've got to start putting things in smaller bite-sized pieces because your audience cannot listen. If you don't care that your audience walks out and doesn't remember, fine, continue doing what you're doing. But if you want actionable items to change your life, you need to put in bite-sized pieces that they can take home with them. And that's what I have done so much more in my career because I want you to leave better than when you walked in. It's just like when we come to one of your events, Jane, you're uplifted, but I also walk out reminded that God loves me and that you are not shying away from the fact of your foundational belief.
Right.
Which, half our audience gets it, the other half doesn't. But those who do, it's like, it's about time somebody spoke about that. So I think there's a place for us. We may not belong on every stage, but the stages that we're on, we can be life-changing.
I think so too. You got to pick your audience and know it's going to be a win-win for everybody. I love that. Thomas, of course, is in financial services. And I remember hearing him answer the question, and this is something you could play off on, not that you probably hadn't already thought of it. Somebody said, no, what do you do? And Thomas said, I help people avoid the biggest financial mistakes, the 5 financial mistakes that other people make. And that's all he said.
Boom.
I help people avoid 5 financial mistakes that most people make.
So
Well,
what's
where
the
does
next
that lead?
question?
Yes.
What
So
are they?
what are they? So, we used to say that in pageant interviews, lead the interview. If
Right.
the interviewer does not catch you leading the interview. And
Yeah.
you got to be careful with that. But in fact, and I think what's happened to me is when COVID hit, I felt like the non-essential humorist was non-essential. I think, oh, there are so many people, they want information and they want it hard and fast and they want to learn. So I created a program recently. I've launched it, and it's the 5 avoidable mistakes my family made trying to preserve our family farm. So I'm speaking to a group of women, and they're involved in agriculture in Louisiana coming up. And I mentioned it. I didn't get it out of my mouth. What? Say that again? And so I gave them the name of the keynote, which is fun. And they said, you have a story? I said, oh, I got a story. And they said, we want that. I didn't even get through with the whole concept. So what I'm saying is what you do, Deb, is so intentional, and it's good takeaway advice. Just like don't engage after the third time.
Sorry.
Felt, what was that? The formula, feel,
Yeah, and
felt.
so it's feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. Other people I've spoken to felt as you have until they found out that this product will make your teeth bright white.
I love that. Do you have any of those other quips that you share in your presentations or in your books? That's brilliant.
Yeah, well, that's not mine. So it's like I said, it's an old multi-level. It's like you
Oh, I
said,
see.
sometimes we dust off what we know in the past. Let me just go back real quick. It's not a third reply. You don't give a third reply. So
Oh,
boom.
just at
Yeah,
two,
no.
you're
Yeah,
two
that's
and
it.
done instead of
Never
one and
a third reply starts a fight. So
yeah.
we never do a third reply and then turn off the fan because it's not going to get any better. So yeah, I probably have a bunch of different little quips like that. But again, it's only going to be valid where you need it as a speaker. It's kind of like the ear can fix what the eye can't see. Every speech coach knows that. But it's interesting how many of your clients won't practice out loud. They'll go, wait a minute, and you're like, yeah, not going to work. You got to actually do it out loud. And then, like you, practice from a mirror or a video camera. Because I have clients who are like, well, I don't do that. Really? Well, let's watch. And they're like, oh my gosh, I do that. Yeah, you do, but we can fix it. I've also found, just like you, we just need to be positive in this business. Nobody's here to tear anybody down. If I ever hear a speech coach, this idea, people are like, well, be tough on me, just tear me down and build me up. I'm like, well, I'm not going to tear you down. That doesn't work at this age. It never worked, and it really does great damage. So why don't we polish you from where you are? Because there's always something good to start with.
So how important today is listening?
Well, if I actually knew anybody who did,
Yeah, that's
well,
funny.
of course,
So right.
of course, it's important. Everybody's waiting to put their 2 cents in. It's really hard. I've had to learn to slow down and quiet down. I was
Me
a
too.
talker when I was younger. Now, I'm going to listen.
The
The problem with, the problem
No,
with listening is you realize people say really crazy stuff.
yeah, that's true. I was reading in my devotional. I cannot pronounce Lisa's last name. I want to say it starts with a T. You probably know the devotional I'm talking about. It's Seeing Beautiful Again. It's a great, if you don't have it, Deb, you got to get that. I mean,
Okay.
it was the coolest little devotional, and they're short, but they're meaty. And she said when she was a child, she was so mixed up. She was at a funeral, her first funeral of a family member, and she was just angry. And she started hitting or kicking rather a bed of ants, and all the ants came out. And an adult walked up to her, and she had heard the thing like, oh yeah, I get this, I'm so sorry, you're so young, blah blah blah. And the adult looked at her with all these ants flying all out of the mound and said this, I hate ants. And she said that was the most comforting thing somebody had ever said to me during that time of my life. I hate ants. Because she said that's where she was.
Yeah.
And that kind of intuitive comment to someone is brilliant, in my opinion, and just the quiet nature of care, just quiet, or just touching a hand or squeezing a hand. I found that so much more effective than words is the body language. And I'm sure you teach body language too. And I know you've judged a million pageants. I have too. But a lot of people say, well, what questions do you ask? And I say, I don't really ask a lot, but I watch them
Right.
because I know people see more than they will hear. And they like to see good body language. Do you agree with that?
I do. Actually, I've never judged a pageant.
No way, no way. Oh, don't say that. You'll be on the circuit now. I'm
I
say,
don't want
me
to, because
neither.
when you're a coach, I've had so many of the girls.
Oh, that's true.
So I really can't, because I would naturally have an affection for the person I've been working with. So I don't
Yeah.
actually do that. And then again, I'm really not in that business anymore. But I will say, to your point, we would all do well to listen.
Oh, I think so too. I remember I was judging a pageant one time. And it was one of those girls you go, oh, bless your heart. This girl ain't going to win. I'm so sorry, sugar. But you don't say it. You just thinking it. And you got 7 minutes to interview them. And I remember looking at her and I said, do you have any special talents? Now, that's a sad question. I know that's a sad question, but it was a sad contestant. But, it was just one of those things you just got to go with and love them through it. She said, oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I can write with my right hand and I can write with my left hand. I'm amphibious. I just sat there and everybody else was trying to, like, I feel the table shaking, people
Just
trying not
shaking.
to laugh. And I'm sure, she probably just gave it a go. And again, the dog didn't hunt. But, there's some people that you work with and you
Yeah.
kind of go, yeah, but let's just be the best where you are and maybe up your game. Is that kind of what you have done through your career?
You know what? Yes, because I'm not changing you. It's so funny. I have presidents of corporations. They're like, well, you're going to tear me down to make me better. No, no. At this age, I can only polish you up from where you are. But I believe there's a lot there, and maybe we haven't tapped into it. What always surprises me is when I am handed a client, they're like, I'm not doing this. Oh, okay. Well, let me go tell HR you're not going to do this. Um, I've been blown away. And 9 times out of 10, they had a terrible experience when they were younger, and I just can't get through it. I've had quite a few women who get to a certain point because of trauma in their past. They just can't move forward. And I'm like, we just need to get some healing. Got to move you
That's
forward.
right.
So
That's right.
there is a lot there, and you end up being, and then they're a little embarrassed because it's obvious, the secret. I don't know the secret. I have an idea of what probably happened. I've been doing this for years. And I've had to pull some parents aside and say, there's something happened with your kid. And I've had parents
Wow.
hate me for it. And I've had parents call me up and said, we had no idea. We can't thank you enough.
Wow.
After a while, it just you can tell. I mean, it's like people who handle money, they can tell when the false $100 bills in there. It's just, you can just tell. I will say this. It's funny. You've got your stories too. I had a lady one time and I said, so what is the greatest gift you can give somebody? Now, the answer is usually time. Because your grandparents don't need anything else. They really want your time. And this kid said, a sippy cup. I think it was like a hot cup. One of these things they could do hot and cold.
Yeah.
And it was years ago. And I was like, wait, what? And she said, yeah, it keeps things hot or keeps things cold. That's the greatest gift you can give anybody. And I remember thinking to myself, we're going nowhere. But can I tell you something? She did not win her pageant. And about a week later, I got a box in the mail and she had sent me a cup with my name on it. And I remember thinking to myself, you're going to go somewhere. You figured it out. You knew that was the wrong answer, but you laughed with it. She's now a lawyer and she's going to be great.
Oh
Because
my
the jury's going to love her. But she
Yeah.
gets it.
Well, Deb, when you coach people, how do you start out? Do you say, tell me about yourself? Or, I'm sure you've already done your research, but is that kind of the way you start?
No, usually I'm handed a speech that's really terrible.
Oh,
And
I
I'm
see.
like, okay, we're probably not going to use this, but tell me what about it you like. What has to be said? Tell me, what's your favorite quote? Excuse me, if you could, I have an Excel spreadsheet that has like 1,683 quotes on it.
Wow.
I do a cut and paste, and I've got quotes through the ages. Because a quote can say things you and I can't say. So my quote for this year is Mark Twain, Kindness is a language the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Kindness
Wow.
is a language the deaf can hear and the blind can see. And sometimes a quote says it much better than I can. So why don't you use
Yeah.
a quote? And I'm really surprised how many people are like, I don't have any quotes. Well, we need to find a couple.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be you, but it needs to be a true sense of who you are. Because nobody came to see your PowerPoint slides. Nobody woke up this morning and said, oh, yes, PowerPoint slides. They came to hear you, your message, your
Right.
story. So now what are you going to leave me with? And I really hate it when they go, well, you need to, you're speaking from 9 to 10. Okay, nobody's speaking from 9 to 10 unless you're really good. I'm going to start late. I'm going to end early. I might have a little bit of Q&A in there. I'm not going to fill your time. I'm going to fill what's best for the audience. And some people don't like that. I mean, I speak up to 6 hours a day. It's a lot.
Great day. Woo.
Well, but remember,
Wow.
I'm training. We're up, we're doing it, we're going back again. I think this year I basically stopped at 4 hours. I'm getting older and it's just a lot to stand and do it for so long. But the reality is I've got a lot to say in such a little bit of time, and you need to absorb it because I'm walking out of here. You can buy my books, you can listen to my podcast, you can call me anytime, but I need to get this through to you, and you need to take this, absorb it, and let's make it work. So tell me about yourself. I pretty much know what I'm stepping into.
I see.
But
Yeah.
for most of my clients, it's like, I've got to give a big presentation. And I'm like, so, what's missing in a lot of presentations? And what's interesting is I believe, Jane, you've done this for years. You have music in your presentation, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time you do. Do you know most presentations the last few years there's been no music? I'm like, why not? I actually have a music track, and it's every rock and roll, get up and dance, BG song you can find. Why? Because your audience is exhausted. So there's two things I always tell my speakers. First of all, they can't hear. They all grew up with rock and roll, so they're deaf. It is what it is.
That's true. That is true.
So you need a microphone. I have a big voice. I use my outside voice inside because nobody's listening.
Right.
Also, they're tired. Yeah. People in America today, Jane, they stand, let me see if I can do this with my hands. They don't stand straight. They stand hunched over. And It's not because they're on their cell phone. It's because they carry the weight of the world on their shoulders.
Yeah.
Because parents now live a lot longer. So now you're caring for elderly parents who you thought you had enough money to provide for.
Oh, yes.
And your daughter came home pregnant, and now you got a grandbaby in the house. And the weight of the world is manifesting physically in a lot of our clients.
Yeah, that is
I
so
do everything from stand up straight. Let's fill the space. Powerful people take up physical space. It is my mantra. I've been saying it for 100 years because when you're a powerful person, people will move away only out of awe and shock and honor, not because they don't like you.
right.
And so you need to have this aura of professional power so you can be the person you dreamed you would be. And
I love that, Deb. I love that. So how do people get in touch with you?
Thanks. Just my website, Deb Sofield, SOF as in Frank, IELD, Sofield.com, www.debsofield.com. And Amazon has all my books.
Best political speaker ever. I want to see if you and I both agree with this.
It's going to be Ronald Reagan.
Oh, absolutely. What was it about him, Deb? What was that? What was that thing?
Because he brought the story to life. Do you remember the Challenger incident?
Yes.
I do. And what did he say? They broke the bonds of earth. And I'd have to go back and look. And basically, they broke the bonds of earth and entered into the skies of heaven.
Or when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and he said the long goodbye.
Yeah.
Or
when he got shot and he said, "Oh, they missed." He was quick. He was quick.
He really, and as we wrap this up, I will say to you, with all the brilliance that you bring into people's lives and their careers, do you do resumes by chance? Because I got a child that needs a job. Okay, shoot. So maybe you can help me figure that one out. But I'm gonna say this. All that you have said is so beautifully said. And I think an element that people need to focus on, whether you can speak it or live it, is just a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
and a good sense of humor. You've been awesome, girl.
It's always nice to see you. Thank you.
Oh,
Very
listen, I
kind of
loved
you
it.
to
Thank you
consider.
so much, Deb. You bring a lot of joy and a lot of expertise. Y'all need to call Deb. She's got it going, and she knows how to take you from level A to level Z to success. I love it. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you. Always good.